Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the ravens? People were frightened these days. Just 2 weeks past, Reynardo had sneaked through an empty town and listened to the ravens caw about the Emperor's new taste in ritual sacrifice. Who leaves these chests everywhere? Wondered Reynardo. I should send him a thank you note. Reynardo had tried everything. Zenobia had loved him to death. The Sky Ripper had destroyed everything. The Iblistone had corrupted everyone who held it. He'd never put much faith in Lapino. But Lapino was all he had left. Hey, do old ravens go grey? You know what? Don't worry about it. Don't get ahead of yourself, lad. The road less traveled, thought Reynardo. How intriguing. Once you try it, you're hooked.
Artisans he was creating employment for. Truly, he was a job creator.
Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Where had the mad rabbit got to? The new pathway made Renato curious.
his hand. He could feel its secret power. This is why heroes are called dashing, Renato thought. See? Dashing? Get it? Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who happened to also be a deadly sorcerer, and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. And it would be nice to see her. He'd always had a soft spot for her. And, he felt sure, she had one for him.
On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the Transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Bernardo had already let that armature slip away to save Lapino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that. The core of the Sky Ripper? Lapino's excited. That's an actual thing that we could just go and get. You've been busy.
He sure had. Renato told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, and scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. True, the core was capable of terrible, uncontrollable destruction. But this time, he was sure it would work great. It's beautiful here, thought Renato. He was thrilled to be back with his old war buddy. He'd missed the mad rabbit, but something was not quite right. You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato.
Traitors!
Caught the ravens. Renato had been to a dungeon once where all the chests had teeth and eyes. It had been a short visit.
Silent type.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. You almost never saw wild gogglers together like this. The toads had to train them not to peck each other to death. So these had to be imperial gogglers. That meant ravens were up ahead. What else could you hook? Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds, if you didn't count the ravens. Renato smelled sick animals and dying ones, but no healthy ones. And getting a bad feeling about this, Renato thought. Maybe Lupino was right. Maybe they should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here. Renato had once read a story where a rabbit went into a portal with a fly and came out with a fly's head. It creeped him out to even think about it. about puzzles was, once you solved one, you knew how to solve it again. Puzzles had no, what was the word? Replayability? Renato wondered if you could design a puzzle that would be different every time you played with it. Wouldn't that be fun? He was more and more extraordinary. As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy, like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides. It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it. He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lupino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost.
The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato. But what if Lupino lost the core to the Empire? That could be a good thing, couldn't it? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself. Lupino was a touchy rabbit. Renato knew that.
You're brave, I know,
Renato said. But this is what I was hired to do.
At least let me run ahead and warn the scientists you're coming.
So, Lupino was intent on being a hero, just like him. War made sensible men crazy for glory, and Lupino had never been sensible. But what was the harm? Lupino might well trip over a hornet's nest of ravens. But that was better than ravens lying in ambush, wasn't it? They finished the trip to the Nexus in silence. Renato had no sooner rescued his friend than he was putting him back in danger. All right, he finally said as they landed. Go. As Renato watched Lupino vanish on the horizon, he could feel nausea building in him. He felt ill. Could his knees really be aching this much? But how could he have handed the core off to Lupino? That was a recipe for disaster. Take a leap of faith, said the inscription. He'd once met a pirate captain. He used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again?
Someone needs a bath.
This chest smelled kind of funky. He hoped he didn't get it in his clothes. Renato felt worse. All his joints were aching now. He'd been through beatings that felt better than this. So the core had a kind of poison that could harm you without even touching you. That's new. Well, it had power. The rebellion needed something with power. And how was this any worse than a sword wound? Well, a death by sword was sudden and fair. This was just squalid. A piecemeal death, like old age. A very clever engineer named Elon Muskrat got his start making floating platforms. Not many people knew that. Energy cannons. The last argument of kings. Cowardly warlocks. Why wouldn't they come close where he could kill them? Smell any better when you're dead. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists everywhere. Bernardo found the mad rabbit cowering under a desk. The ravens, they must have known we were coming, said Lupino. How did you... Well, see, I was doing a card trick with my lucky deck, and I kind of bobbled the cards, so I went under the desk to gather them up, and boom! I guess we'll have to take the car straight to the secret base. The secret rebel base. Yes. They had engineers there. But wait. Calaveras, the sage in the mountains. Maybe he would know what to do with the naked core. The core was killing him. He needed help. The sage, Calaveras, had given him the maps to find the armature and the core. If anyone knew the true name of the Transcendent Emperor, if anyone knew how to assemble the Sky Ripper, Calaveras did. If anyone could heal Reynardo and render the core safe, at least to its bearer, surely it was he. The base of the mountain was the only safe place for a landing. He would have to continue on foot, muscles aching. Calaveras was a scholar, not a doctor. Could he really save Reynardo from the poison radiating from the lost god's eye he was so recklessly carrying? Goat. Take the goat across first, Reynardo thought. But it was too late. Stay away from the other guy's sword, you know? Oh, this was not a fun way to die. Even if he survived. No one would write ballads about the fox whose knees ached forever, would they? Not unless he paid for it. And he hated paying for publicity. If only he had some way to break the ice. Or convince it he was a friend. These platforms were great. Renato wanted one for his house.
It was chilling walking through the living mountains. There was always noise up ahead. Insects, birds, the croak and flutter of ravens arranging ambushes. But close by, there was only the breeze and the trickle of melting snow. As if every living thing was holding its breath, its poisonous burden to move on. Renato's paws were getting numb. Calaveras really didn't want company, did he? Renato rubbed the fruit into his wounds. He felt better already. Should have done a barrel roll, he thought, as he died.
He hadn't noticed that path before.
There had to be something useful in these things, didn't there?
The right jewel could really give you an edge. The wrong, well, it still looked pretty, didn't it? What was the point of this gate? Did they think no one would notice the lever? Leonardo wasn't sure he should have rescued Lupino. He could have had the Sky Ripper. Now all he had was the core, but it was killing him.
The core! Splendid!
Croaked Calaveras.
Where's the armature?
Right, I was kind of hoping you wouldn't need it.
No, I don't. It's just a professional interest. We've got much better prismatics than the old TE ever did.
So Calaveras was an arcane engineer. He fussed at the core all day. He wrapped it with silver chains, and in front of it, he placed a huge, round ruby, so that it looked like a monstrous, floating eye. Ah, so, what is it?
Yeah, I call it the oculum. It's my very first death ray.
And it won't poison me?
Oh, no, it's completely safe now.
Anything I should watch out for?
Yeah, try to avoid pointing at any mirrors.
As he loaded the oculum onto the Farfarer, Bernardo was a little concerned about Calaveras. People who were utterly sure of themselves, he had found, were either experts or horribly wrong. Or both. But Bernardo only needed to fire the oculum once. He only needed to destroy one ship, the Emperor's ship, and the war was over. Bernardo plunged into the Imperial fleet. He felt the oculum humming. He no longer felt sick. This was going to be fun. Or at least, it was going to be over. Renato resisted the temptation to fire the oculum until the time came. He could sense its arcane energies yearning to escape the sage's wrappings. But it wasn't eating him alive. So that was a plus. He felt good about himself. He'd saved a friend, he'd helped the rebels, he'd relied on himself, but he'd listened to others. He felt like the right sort of hero. Wise, yet decisive. Calaveras had been so sure it would work. Maybe he could fire it just a few times. No harm in that, right? But only when he absolutely needed to. What's behind door number 2? Renado's arm was getting tired. The core was no longer eating at him, but he still felt weak. His stamina was shot. But he had the oculum. When the ravens swarmed him, it would sometimes fire its death ray. It seemed to be warming up too, firing more and more often. Maybe he should let it cool off. He decided to stop using it entirely. Boat crashes that were more fun. Now you're foxed. This is quite the view, he thought. oculum was still hot to the touch. He almost thought it was getting even hotter. Well, that was ridiculous, of course. Anyway, he'd only to fire it one more time, and then he could chuck the whole contraption into the abyss, and the Emperor's ship was now in range. Reynardo squinted. He could make out the line of ravens protecting the ship. Zenobia in front, conjuring. And on the deck, yes, that was His Imperial Majesty, pacing in his golden armor. Reynardo lined up his shot and fired. Caught in the beam, the ship burst into flames. The ravens and Zenobia exploded. The Emperor, too, exploded. Reynardo waited for the beam to stop, but it only got brighter, and the oculum hotter. Frantic, Reynardo pulled the oculum towards the abyss. The ruby burst into flames. The shiny metal casing glowed, then melted. That was good. Now the core could cool off, right? Reynardo ran. The blast incinerated him instantly, along with both fleets. The shockwave could be felt across all Erda. That winter, with neither Empire nor rebels to rule them, the islands slid into banditry. And so began the Second Age of Darkness. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome. There would be a way to win. Reynardo could feel it. He'd have to explore choices he'd never made before he could figure it all out, though. And with that, the book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Reynardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. On the other hand, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Lupino was no game changer, but could Reynardo really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Ah, Lupino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lupino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lupino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Lupino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen the winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? Once, Reynardo had opened a chest, and a jack-in-the-box jumped out. Jack-in-the-boxes, they gave him the Wiggins.
Everybody who wants to die, raise your weapon. All right.
People were frightened these days. Just 2 weeks past, Bernardo had sneaked through an empty town and listened to the ravens caw about the Emperor's new taste in ritual sacrifice.
It wasn't his fault. They looked so breakable.
Bernardo had tried everything. Zenobia had loved him to death. Sky Ripper had destroyed everything. The Iblistone had corrupted everyone who held it. He'd never put much faith in Lupino. But Lupino was all he had left.
Oh, you shouldn't have.
It was time for a little exploration. Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Where had the mad rabbit got to?
Who needed a doctor when you could eat fruit to heal?
Renato felt uncomfortable around cemeteries. They reminded him of a goth vixen he'd dated for a while. Renato remembered when he'd first stolen one of these. Good times. Rather well, actually. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who happened to also be a deadly sorcerer, and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. And it would be nice to see her. He'd always had a soft spot for her. And he felt sure she had one for him. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Renato had already let that armature slip away to save Lupino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that. The core of the Sky Ripper? Lupino's excited. That's an actual thing that we could just go and get. You've been busy. He sure had. Renato told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, and scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. True, the core was capable of terrible, uncontrollable destruction. But this time, he was sure it would work great. It's beautiful here, thought Renato. He was thrilled to be back with his old war buddy. He'd missed the mad rabbit, but something was not quite right.